everyone, and welcome to Heart and Hand, the Rangers podcast. This is your extra show for the week. I'm your host, as always, on Extra, Cammy Bell. I've got the best cast I think I could possibly ever have for Extra, and what is going to be a pretty momentous weekend, I think, in the history of Rangers. First of all, it is my brother-in-arms and very, very good friend, Mr. Ian Hoggy. Where's your excitement levels at the moment? You've got, the young kids and stuff as well. They'll have not seen this within their living memory and stuff. They must be kind of building up to kind of fever point at the moment.
Oh man, first of all, hello. We are the champions and all that. Cammy, it's strange. As you know, 4 kids. One doesn't bother about football because she's a weirdo. The eldest is 20. And I remember the last time we won the title, lifted the title, 2011. David, who is still yet to be introduced, met you and Scott Vandenacker outside Rugby Park when she was 10. And then just a few months later, my eldest son was born. So both my sons, football daft. Cammy, you will see them both on Saturday. Socially distancing, of course. But my God, they got a wee gift set from Rangers earlier today, and they've been wandering about the house with their 55 glasses and their Rangers flags on.
Good on them. Have you put the tattoos on them yet?
Not yet. That will be probably later on tonight, so they're fresh for tomorrow.
Yeah, kudos to whoever arranged to get the party packs put together at Rangers, because they are absolutely fantastic and well worth the money. And as you heard his dulcet tones very briefly there as well, they don't come bigger than this. The big dog himself, Mr. David Edgar. David, thank you for joining me on Extra.
I was impressed by the fact that you said that Hoggy has kids and stuff, and I was wondering what that might
guinea pigs.
Yeah,
claimed and unclaimed.
Yeah, that's very true. No, it feels special even on this Thursday night as this goes out. We are all extremely excited. I know I can literally tell how many hours there are until kick-off on Saturday, and it's an unusual feeling. It's a strange feeling. I'm trying to savour it and not wish the time away, but equally, I want it to be Saturday, and I want to see Tav with the trophy, and the manager with the trophy, and Alfie with the trophy, and all of them with the trophy. It's been a long time, as Ian says. It's been. I don't think that we quite, even though we've won the league. God, what, 2004, I think, when we won 55, given how long it's been since it was confirmed. But every time that we've done something along this journey, and especially this last part of it, I think that we've gone, after St Mirren, right, we can take a bit of time to reflect, and then after we beat Celtic the other week, we'll take a bit of time to reflect. I don't think the last 10 years can really be sat down and analysed and chopped up. There are bits of it, but I think that it will come out more through time now that we're a wee bit calmer. But until we actually do see that trophy sitting in the Ibrox trophy room, then I think it's still all too overwhelming. There's just too many emotions kicking around.
I would like, Cammy, if you don't mind, I'll take slight issue. They don't, and I say this as a short arse, David. It doesn't come much bigger than this, David Edgar. I think Lorenzo Amoruso begs to differ.
Yeah, well, that's not something I could argue with. Wouldn't ever dream of arguing with a legendary Rangers captain.
We will come on to Saturday in just a minute, because we do have a game to review, but to preview, I should say. But we do have a game to review, because on Wednesday night, Rangers took a trip to Almond Vale or the Tony Macaroni Arena, or whatever it's called this week. I always forget the names of it. Where we faced a Livingston side. And Hoggy, I'm kind of keen to talk to you about this, because we're both local to West Lothian. Livingston have had, I think it's fair to say, a kind of decent season. I think we've all got a lot of time for Martindale, and he was very complimentary in his post-match after the game last night, and a nice touch, I think, by Livingston, doing what I think is probably the most socially distanced guard of honour that you'll ever see in your entire life. Livy have kind of been a thorn in our side last season in particular, and I don't think anyone at this point in time is thinking too much around, we just want to get to Saturday afternoon, around about 2:30. We can see that trophy lift, and this kind of game kind of stood in the way of it. But it was a potential banana skin because of that awful pitch in Livingston. Plus, they could have their own motivation for being able to try and produce a result. We have had some injury problems. I wasn't worried about it because the only thing that we're focusing on now is the unbeaten run and trying to get over the 100 points mark. How are you feeling about when you saw the team last night? Joe Rebo obviously had to fill in the berth at left back. We're pleased to announce that obviously Borna is not going to have a serious problem in terms of risking missing the Euros, which I think everyone was worried about when he went off. But Aribo, we know he could play within there. He's had a tremendous season. The manager trusted him within that. John McLaughlin coming in for Al McGregor, I thought was interesting. But I still think that we put out a very, very strong team. It was clear that we were taking it seriously. And as the game started, and as you saw the various different kind of patterns of play unfolding, it was clear that we were looking to go out and just put in a really professional performance. Coming away with a 3-0 win speaks for itself. But I think the manner of which we started out the game last night showed that, we're not on the beach yet.
Would 3 key changes to what would be a normal side, Cammy? McLaughlin, Simpson was by necessity, and Aribo at left back, again, through necessity. Everyone else, even Hadji in midfield, is okay. It's a normal thing for us this season. I think I'd sum it up, Cammy, by saying I saw that team and never once did I doubt we were going to win. And that's very different for us, as you know. Usually it's a whole banana skin, etc. And I could argue with myself in terms of how much is that because we've won the league versus not. But I never doubted for a second yesterday that we were going to come away with a win. And the way that we started, we were so at it so early. I did wonder if we were going to be on our holidays. But then you could argue the same about Livingston. The way we started, however, we were up, we were at them, really in their face. And it spoke volumes around how we were hunting after the ball. We had so much possession, long periods of possession. And then when we lost it, we're hunting in packs of 2s, 3s and 4s. And that's just a team that wants to go and win and lay down a marker. And it's quite obvious that they've got 38 games unbeaten, first and foremost in their head. And last night was just that. Let's get that second last over the line. Ultimately, it turned out to be a really, really, I thought, terrific performance.
David, I think I've got an image in my head of the manager getting on at the players. We're not going to focus again on the disappointments it had within the kind of cup competitions, but we know that the manager has set them now the mini targets. He set them, the unbeaten run. He wants to go over 100 points. We've never got to that position in terms of doing 100 points plus. We want to be able to try and get there. I think he's went out to them and he's just said, the season's not over. It's important to be able to go out and continue to develop within this. I thought it was a really strong performance last night. I think when you look at, and I want to focus a bit on him in a second, but before we got into James Tavernier and his contribution into the game, the way how we really just kind of grasped that game and made it so refreshingly routine. And I don't know how many times I've said that this season, but we are not letting standards slip. And I think that what this shows is this team has been refreshingly routine and relentless, if I had to continue my alliteration. But the thing that you've got to focus on this now is how we can just continue to just reach those new standards and those I think those goals, those aims that we wanted to get to. That has been unbeaten, and I think last night was going to be the most the biggest risk that we were going to have to that.
I've seen much more intensity in a Livingston Rangers game at Almond Vale. So I mean, it was an end of season game, and I think that if you even were to go back and watch the 0-0 that we had there earlier in the season, there was far more intensity to that match. The cup match last season that Rangers won 1-0 was far more intense. That's inevitable when you've got teams who don't have an awful lot to play for, really. And I'm sure Livingston were talking about, we want to finish fifth, and Rangers clearly they want the unbeaten record. But I think that because of that, because both teams were a little more relaxed than perhaps normal, what that meant was the better side, who were very confident as well, knew that if they just kept going and played their football, chances are that we would be better than Livingston, and that's what happened. And I think you did see that. I think the first half an hour or so, was Rangers confidently stroking the ball about. It can be a bit frustrating for us as fans, but because they're not really making a lot of chances. But I think that we do have to bear in mind that part of modern football is most teams can defend. Most teams have got decent shape. Livy particularly, they've got good shape and they work really hard. You've got to wear them down. That's what the possession is for. It's not aimless. You're constantly probing, you're constantly working to find space so that you make sure that when they make one mistake, you can take advantage, and that's what happened, and that's what led to the penalty. And I think you just saw that this is a Rangers side who weren't playing. Okay, it wasn't the most frenetic game in the world, but earlier in the season at Livingston, there was an air of panic because this was a side who hadn't won anything, who the questions were all still there from the seasons previously. Whereas this last night was not that these are the champions. This is a side who know how good they are, as they demonstrated in the second half with two absolutely wonderful team goals. So don't get me wrong, at 2-0, Livingston had a spell when they certainly should have scored one. Wee bit unlucky with a shot from outside the box. Not unlucky at all with the second one. It was a terrible, terrible miss. That's not bad luck. That's bad finishing. But even at that, I felt had they got one, Rangers would have reacted in the right way and stepped it up and gone and probably got the third regardless. I think that is just an assurance. I think that's just a belief. That's something that has been lacking in previous years, that this season has grown and kept growing and kept growing. And as you mentioned there, we need to find it in the cups. We know that there's clearly something there because Rangers don't put in the kind of performances that we've done repeatedly in cup. I mean, our two worst performances of this season have come in cup competition. So clearly there's something there. But in terms of the league campaign, in terms of what they produce domestically, in the bread and butter domestically of the league campaign, this is a team who know how good they are, and they know that if they work hard and make sure that their opponents can't outwork us, because that's really all opponents, with the exception of maybe one team, have. If they don't outwork us, they are not going to out-quality us. And I thought that in the end, Rangers were excellent. And a point about the teams was made actually by the Livingston TV commentator last night, where he said, he laughed and he said, the thing is, people saying it's a weak Rangers side. He said, I look at the subs bench and all six of them would walk into the Livingston team. And that's true, and something that we do need to bear in mind. Rangers now have got a squad that is packed with quality in a way that it has not been for a number of years.
So let's talk a little bit around that quality, and probably for most people, the leading candidate for player of the season, and we have a number of them, and that's James Tavernier. Now we're going to come on to Tav when talking about Saturday, but there's clearly something, and I'll stay with you, David, on this if I can, where I think we've all been a little bit gutted that during the actual title win, the confirmation, as it were, Tav obviously had injury issues, and as a result of that, Nathan Patterson was given his opportunity to be able to come in. I don't think you'll ever meet a Rangers fan who will say that there's very few captains of Rangers who have been more deserving of lifting the Scottish Premier Trophy than James Tavernier. Last night, for me, David probably echoed what he brings to the team. And what I mean by that is the guts to be able to take a penalty when we know that he's missed his last three in the bounce, but an excellent penalty. But his overall performance, I thought, last night was just phenomenal. You mentioned the two great team goals. The first one, almost a carbon copy of Jermaine Defoe scoring against Livingston. Against Livingston, ironically. But just a fantastic ball over the top, which deliciously laid off of Ryan Kent. But this is talking about a guy who, and you can see that the history, I understand all of the history and coming up to the course of this season, but his contribution to the team this year has been absolutely magnificent. Last night, again, he showed it. and you can just tell that he loves to be back out playing. He loves to be able to try and get back in, into the swing of things. I thought he was imperious last night. I thought, by and large, there was certain elements of that where he was absolutely unplayable. He's not treating that as an end of season game. He's treating that as, this is 90 minutes. I want to get in there. I want to be the captain of an unbeaten team. I want to be the guy who gets this, over the 3-figure mark. And I just, you can't give a guy enough plaudits for me. I would be stunned if he doesn't win Player of the Season.
I think Rangers have got strong candidates for Player of the Season. So I do think that's something that, flip a coin or flip a die rather, because I think any of the 5 players who are in for the 2 awards would be a deserving winner. He was terrific last night. He's a guy who looks as though he enjoys his work, and I think that's probably the key to James Tavernier. I think when he's at his best, he plays football with a smile on his face, and he's got that terrific energy to get up and down the wing. He's got that terrific delivery. He never stops. He just does not stop, and he's a fine footballer. And I think 19 goals, 15 goal assists for the season. 34 goal contributions, important, vital goal contributions from your right back is remarkable. Even in the modern game, it's remarkable. And again, that confidence. I know I've missed a couple, but I'll put this one away, and he did, and perfectly as well. And I think that it's almost frightening to think, 19 and 15. What would he have done if he hadn't missed those 2 months? What we would be looking at a 25 goal right back. But he's been just such a great player for Rangers this season. Some of his displays in the first half of the season were just out of this world. I mean, just absolutely remarkable. A left back putting in a cross, and it's a right back steaming in at the back post to head it away. That's something we saw more than once. I think that, as you say, because of the circumstances of his career at Rangers, highs and lows, but to be honest, more lows than highs. But he's always kept chipping away, and there is something in any sports story there's something romantic about someone who does that, someone who doesn't give up. And I think, to me, that's emblematic of Rangers in the last decade, somebody who persevered when at times it must have been tempting to say, I could go to England and earn more money and have a quieter life, and he didn't. And I think that there's something really honourable about that. And you mentioned the word deserve. Of course, we might feel that people deserve things in football, but football doesn't work like that. Football doesn't agree with us on that. I mean, there's guys I'd love to have seen hold up a league trophy for Rangers that never did, but James Tavernier does deserve it. He deserves it in that football sense as well, because he worked so hard and he didn't give up and he kept going. And his Rangers career has been like the way he plays, and that it's just constantly moving forward and accepting that sometimes, life, like the defender, will stick you up in the air and you'll land on your backside, but you pick yourself up and you don't let it stop you trying it again. And, from the guy 5 years ago, the cup final disappointment, obviously, he'll now be the guy who lifts 55, and that's, I think it's a brilliant story, but it's very emblematic to me of Rangers.
Hoggy, I'd like to kind of just touch on another couple of players just as we kind of wrap up the review of the Livy game, and 2 in particular. One who I know is quite close to your heart for national purposes, and that's John McLaughlin. Now, I've been a big fan of John McLaughlin since he came in. I think he's proven to be a very, very shrewd signing, and what a fantastic reassurance that we have, that not only do we have the best keeper in Scotland, but we also have the second best keeper in Scotland. I thought last night he was absolutely fantastic. I thought, and I really want to hear more people talking about this, because it's not easy what he did last night. The shot off the bar that Davey was talking about earlier on from Livy, it kind of crashed, so it went straight up in the air. McLaughlin, had to dive. He was up off the ground and then straight up again to punch the ball away. These saves are not easy, but he makes it look easy. And I think that when you consider what he could do within the Scotland national team, I'm bewildered as to why David Marshall seems to be getting ahead of him. But a great display last night. I've got a lot of time for John McLaughlin.
David Marshall will get in ahead of him because of his antics in Serbia. But he's played more games all season. David Marshall's played 33 games. John McLaughlin, however, came in as a free transfer, a second choice goalkeeper. But we all knew of his pedigree because he showed up well at Hearts and then he showed up well at Sunderland. However, let's put it into context. John McLaughlin has played 14 league games for Rangers and he's conceded 3 goals and got 12 clean sheets. John McLaughlin is not only the second best goalkeeper in Scotland, he's the second best Scottish goalkeeper. The first best doesn't want to go to the Euros. John McLaughlin, for me, as perhaps the only guy in the pod who gives a toss about Scotland as a national side, John McLaughlin should be the national goalkeeper. Last night, you've got to remember, he's not played he's maybe played once in a few weeks, yet he's beaten by the one that comes off the bar. Like you say, Cammy, he's up off the deck straight away. He's punching it away. He's getting battered back down by 2 guys bearing down on him. And that's a guy that's, it's his 37th game of the season. The guy just wants to win. And there's a guy, like I say, that's a second string goalie behind Alan McGregor, who's one of the most intense men on the whole planet on the football park. John McLaughlin, do you know what? Alan McGregor, and clearly none of us want this to happen. McGregor, say next summer, could retire. McLaughlin could become the Rangers goalkeeper. I think he's that good.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think it was a fantastic piece of business as well. And Hoggy, sticking with you, because I do want to talk about this young man, because I think he's had a fantastic season. We've probably seen a lot of development out of this particular player, but asking Joe Aribo to kind of fill in at the left back berth last night, the manager spoke about it afterwards, saying, good players can play and really well in their position. Top players can play anywhere in the pitch. Gerrard's a huge advocate of Joe Aribo. I thought he played really, really well last night, and he still allowed himself that opportunity to have that kind of creative flair that we've seen develop across the course of this season. But we're a little bit threadbare. I think we can mention that. With injuries and suspensions and various other things that have happened over the last few weeks, we've had to do a little bit of kind of makeshifts, certainly in the benches for sure. But bringing Joe Aribo into left back, being able to try and get him in there, and still seeing the guy flourishing. He's had a tremendous season this season, I think, and I'm really excited about what we're going to see from him next year.
Cammy, it's only 10 months, 9.5 months that you and I were on one of the pods, I can't remember what, it might have been the Hamper, talking about Joe Aribo and what a big season it was for him. And if he couldn't make this season as his proper breakthrough season, his proper first team, pretty much regular, we could see him moving back down south. By God, he's taken it with 2 hands. He's played 42 games. He's scored 8 goals. He's scored big goals. I think he's also proven to himself. And Davey, interested in your views on this. I actually think Joe Aribo this season has proven to himself that he's a proper football player, because he comes up from Charlton. He's, big fish, little pond, all the rest of it. He looked a little overawed to begin with. This season, by God, he'd bulked up, and then he takes to the park. And there's just a confidence that he exudes. There was a moment in the Celtic game where he turns 2 players, and he could have been in the phone box, and we're away. And it's just that self-confidence in his own ability that I think Cammy, he comes in last night at left back and he just wants to play the game and he still wants to get forward. But we've got Goldson or we've got Simpson, tracking over one just to cover his space. He got pulled about a couple of times in the second half, and that's to be expected, but it was only a couple of times. Joe Aribo was great last night, and he's had a really, really top season for me. Davey, don't know what you think just around that whole season from Joe Aribo.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think, and there's a lesson to be learned here, Cameron, about, say, for example, Yanis Hadji, in that young players are not finished. That is not them. That's not how they're going to be forever. They get better, they improve. And you look at, right, okay, am I seeing things here that suggest that there's a player there? And Joe Aribo had shown us enough. Now, what that translates to quite often in Scotland is when they're not great every week, which young players seldom are, unfortunately, you'll hear people say things like, flatters to deceive. And by that, what they mean is they're not great in every game. we've got to be patient because, as has been noted, we can't afford to buy the finished article. We can either get players when they're on the way up or players when they're on the way down. That's just the financial reality of Scotland. And if you look at Kent, and if you look at Aribo, and if you look at, and I think Hagi moving forward, even guys like Barisic took a while to get going. Connor Goldson, you can argue, has taken a couple of years to find their form. Now, the difference now is that was a brand new team that was starting from scratch. So people are right saying, well, we can't afford to build a team every three, and give them 3 years every time. No, but the idea is then that your projects are coming into a settled team. That wasn't the case when Steven Gerrard took over. He was starting from a baseline of 0. Now you've got the opportunity, hopefully, because it's a successful team, to be able to bring through your projects into a team that's already winning thing, and they can get time to kind of push on to the next level. That's been absolutely the case, I think, with Joe Aribo. Joe Aribo, you get the impression he's such a nice guy. Yeah, I get the impression sometimes if he was a bit of an arrogant guy, it might be because he's so good, and I'm not sure sometimes even he realizes it. But he's got tremendous ability with the ball at his feet. Like, I mean, really, how many times you see him go into a challenge and you think he's lost it, and then the next thing he's galloping away with the ball. He's a great passer of the ball, as we know. I think there are more goals in him when he plays further forward. I think, year on year we've seen that, and I think you'll see him go on and be a regular 20 goal a season midfielder. But to go in at left back on that surface, and they did target him in the first half. Okay, they didn't have a lot going forward because Rangers retained possession really well. That wasn't easy, but he didn't go in and look nervous. He didn't huff, at being asked to fill in at left back. And some players would, maybe not in this squad, which is one of the reasons I think we all love this team so much. But you've seen it before. He just went, okay, I'll give it my best shot, and his best shot was tremendous, I thought.
Just, sorry, Cammy, just to build on that, David, Joe Aribo, it's a few weeks ago, Heart and Hand sponsored, do you know what, I can't even remember who we were playing. I had the opportunity to speak to the man of the match, chosen by us. So myself and my sons chose Joe Aribo. There was only one player. It was a game. It rockets it into the top corner, and a nicer, more down to earth, shy, embarrassed guy you could never.
He's very quiet.
Oh, hugely. But my son started talking to him, and he opened up, and all he wanted. And David Graham at one point said, "Right, that's probably us just about to wrap up," and Aribo went, "Actually, just give us 5 more minutes." Because he was just enjoying talking to the boys, and that's just the kind of guy he is.
I think that, again, is one reason why we love this team so much. It's a tiny wee thing, and it's not done for effect. It's just he's a good guy, and he's talking there to a kid who obviously adores him, and his sons, and he wants to take. Sorry, he wants to to just give them. How much does that mean to a wee boy to have that experience? You know what I mean? So he is a lovely. I remember the first time he came to a press conference that I was at, and I was like, my God, he's really young, and I hadn't realised, because you see him on the field and he's a presence. He's a big guy. But when you saw him just sitting there at the table, you thought he is still really young. But I think the ability that he's got is phenomenal, and you need to learn to be a footballer, and by that. This, Hoggy, of course, the craft of the game. You can have all the skill in the world and all the enthusiasm, but you need to learn about when to go, when not to go, positionally, to manage your body, for a whole season. There's so much to it. Like any job, you learn by doing it, and that's what you're seeing with him.
I think the biggest compliment I can pay guys like Joe Aribo and Yanis Hagi is that, see, when they don't play well, it stands out more. And what I mean by that is, and you're right, David, it dovetails into criticism, it dovetails into people getting onto their backs and stuff. And yes, I've been guilty of that myself. I think we all have at some point with a particular player or whatever. But I think that what will be interesting for these guys, and probably shining that a bit more towards Yanis Hagi as well, in terms of what will happen next season, will be how they are propelled as champions, how they then go on to that with that. And you're right, there is a trade to learn within there, but there's also a confidence element that has to come in with that. Yanis Hagi has performed well at times. I think he's been stifled somewhat with the rotation of what we do with probably our forward 4 or forward 5, depending on who you want to involve within that mix. But I think now we're going to give the guy the opportunity to be able to go on and really kind of shine. And personally, I'm excited about that because I think he's got the capability, and that's what I'm saying. It's a bit of a kind of close compliment to be able to say, actually, when you don't play well, it does stand out more because we know what you're capable of.
Yeah, so, that's it. Yanis Hadji's the type of guy who I can understand why people get frustrated because he can do it. And then there will be games, though. I think one of the key reasons we've won the league this season is the likes of maybe guys who didn't fire all season, the way that Tavernier did, the way that Kent did, the way that McGregor did, the way that Stephen Davis, who, by the way, I thought last night was just, oh my God, he could play till he's like 70 because he's 3 yards ahead of everybody else in the park in his head. It's remarkable to watch. On top of which he's still a great athlete, as he proved, sprinting away there in the last few minutes. He's just such a great footballer. But I think with the younger guys, that they do produce these moments. And one of the reasons Rangers have won the league is last year, the year before, we didn't have Ruth and Hadji and these guys who maybe didn't play brilliantly every week of the season, but they all stepped in at some point. Even Itten has come in, and he hasn't had a lot of football, but Itten's come in and contributed at times. And it's just been that extra wee layer. We always had a solid base. We knew that the first 2 seasons. Gerrard built a solid base almost immediately. We knew that. But then just having these wee guys who turned the draws into wins and then turned the wins into they turned the defeats into draws and then the draws into wins. That's been the difference. These wee guys who could, and we were too reliant on one of them before, which was Morelos. If Alfie didn't do it, nobody did it, and I think the rest of the team knew that. Whereas this year, you've got 5 or 6 guys who've all weighed in with plenty of goals, plenty of assists, and that, I think, is the key difference, and it built that confidence. And, of course, we won the league in March, start of March.
Yeah, and I think I'll throw in some additional kudos in there to the coaching staff and the manager for standing by those players, giving them, that kind of that opportunity when it came, and just really just almost to a certain extent allowing them that opportunity to have failures and to have the space and the safety to make mistakes. Because best of all in the world, if we were cutthroat and we're just saying, right, if you're not here and you're not going to make it, then you're out the door, we wouldn't have Borna Barisic. We wouldn't have the opportunity to develop the guys like Ryan Kent has been able to come into this season as well. Because, like I say, you're right. There was certain games, there were certain kind of runs of games actually where we saw players who were not playing so well within that, and we've had to stand by them. And I think that's a huge testament to the manager and his team. David, I'll stick with you at the moment just before we come on to Saturday, and that's one thing that actually happened after the Livingston game. As many people will have seen on social media, there was a brilliant welcome back for the team back to Glasgow with some fireworks displays going off just on the side of the motorway, and some huge tribute flags that were put out for the team to be able to try and drive by. Some of the players captured it and put it onto their social medias. David, one of the things that I think I wanted to kind of just capture, just as we're talking about the build up to Saturday, is between the three of us in this conversation, we've had a lot of exposure in terms of fan engagement, fan activism. I want to talk a little bit around the relationship at the moment between the fans and the team, which, despite obvious restrictions that have happened across the course of this season, I struggle to think about a more unified approach that we have towards this relentless attitude of ours to become champions, between the players and between the fans who have not been able to get and see them, who have not been able to have that same level of interaction with them as they normally would. But it just feels so conjoined at the moment that we are all on the same page. There is no ill will, there's no clouds, there's nothing like that we've had for so many years. Seen that display last night, and we've seen it before. We actually saw it away at Livingston with the firework display that went off in the 55th minute, the last time we played through in West Lothian. It's just, if you could bottle it and sell it, you'd be a millionaire.
You can't order that. You can't say this is something that we're going to do. you can't make it
happen.
You can't manufacture it, no matter how much money you spend, incidentally, because it's something that has to grow. It's something that's organic. And you can have a team, by the way, that's successful, that you like and that you appreciate, that you love, but there is a bond between this group of players. I think it's because we've suffered together and we've come through it and we've emerged, into the light from a period of darkness. And I think that does bond you to people. It hasn't all been flowers and roses, and I think that I'll go back to, for instance, the team that Advocat put together, which was a phenomenal side, and it was loved by the Rangers fans. But I don't think there was this connection to it that there is with this current team, and I think it's because not all of them cost a lot of money, and they are mortals. They have had bad games, they've had bad periods, and we all remember the end of last season, and there's been times where we've been frustrated with them, and I'm sure there's been times they've been frustrated with us. But when you come through all that together and we just keep supporting them, we keep turning up, we keep putting money into the club, buying the merch, and they keep persevering, they don't give up, and they get there, I think that does give you something. And the vast majority of those players were there that League Cup final defeat, which was a low point. And I think that the fact that they went through that, we went through that, but we all came out the other side, and we're all about to get this reward that the players have earned, but they've earned it with the backing of the supporters and just this fervent belief. And yeah, I know exactly what you mean, and like I say, you can't do it. Even if you spend a lot of money and you build a really successful side, it doesn't guarantee this. It's not something that you can just conjure up. It just develops. And you see it the way that people talk about. Somebody actually said to me at one point, he said, you often use the player second name, but you never do for Alfie. You always call him Alfie. And I'm like, I just love his wee face. And, it's true. It's the bond that people have for Alfie, because he plays football the way I think we all would if we were out there being professional footballers. And there's a love of the game. Ryan Kent, you can see, you can do things none of us could even dream of being able to do, but he plays football with a smile on his face. The fullbacks are the same. They do that. Alan McGregor's just a hero. Stevie Davis is like everybody's dad. They're a team that you can admire. And I think in future, when we look back on this season, this will be a very, very popular team. Hoggy and I are old enough to remember 86, 87 Hoggy. And that team, it did win the league and the League Cup, but it didn't win anything the next year. And by the next time we'd won the title, it was quite a changed team, because Souness was, used to change players every 3 months, didn't he? Mark Falco and Mel Sterling can attest. But there's a lot of fondness for that 86, 87 team, because you look back and you just remember it, in its pomp. And I think in the future, when time has passed and we just look back on this season, I think people will remember this team incredibly fondly.
David, just on that, 86, 87, you and I disagree probably once a week when I tell you that Cammy Fraser was excellent that season, and you burst out laughing and go, "What, Cammy Fraser?" But here's Cammy Fraser, who was Cammy Fraser. Let's face it, belting the post against Celtic in the League Cup final, all the rest of it. It's just those little moments that you remember. And this team this season, we've talked about him already. James Tavernier signed when he was 23 years old in 2015. And he's, what is he now, 29? He's a captain of Rangers. He's been through the worst of the worst times. He's been through the tankings. David, I'll go back to February 2017. I'm not entirely sure I was ever going to forgive James Tavernier for not being able to defend the back post at Tynecastle. And here he is about to ram those words down my throat. So this lot are extra special.
Hoggy, I want to just keep you in this at the moment as well, because one thing I do want to mention again, just before we come on to Saturday, because we are sharing a lot of credit here, and a big portion of that credit equally has to go to a board which, again, within my lifetime, I am not sure there is a greater level of synergy between the board, the team, and the fans as well. I think that when you look at the kind of key appointments that have kind of come in across the course of the last couple of years, the emphasis for change being able to come in, that there's a very strong argument that Dave King should be there on Flag Day next season. But when you look at Douglas Park, when you look at John Bennett, when John Bennett came out and said, two numbers that matter, 150 and 55, James Bisgrove coming in as part of the commercial team, continuing to move us on to different levels. You see the omerta that Ross Wilson has regarding the transfer policy and who he's looking to be able to bring in. The recruitment doesn't stop, and the ethos that he instills within Gerrard and his team around constantly wanting to be able to try and improve. I think that now more than ever, the club feels at almost every single level a desire to not only win things, to be champions, but when that trophy's lifted on Saturday afternoon, there can be a huge number of people involved behind the scenes at Rangers who can take a huge amount of credit for all their hard work that they've done this season. And I legitimately don't know of any period of me being a fan where I've known the club to be so unified in terms of everyone at every level pulling together.
Oh, it's genuinely summer 1986 stuff, Cammy. Genuinely. And of course, back then I was only 10 years old, and my dad was sceptical of, I know Souness is a world-class midfielder, but can he cut it as Rangers manager? But there was David Holmes there, and Holmes was behind the scenes pulling everyone together, everyone in the same direction. And that's what we've got here. We've had years of turmoil, even after Dave King and the Three Bears took over. Years of turmoil because we had so much to fix. We've had millions ploughed in. We've had effectively fans of Rangers financing the club for shares, which is fantastic. It's not really a sustainable business model, but it's been a short-term business model, and they've done it much to the ire of fans elsewhere, which is also nice to see, I hasten to add. But these guys have done it because they've done it for Rangers. They want to do it for Rangers. So, Dave King, Three Bears aside, because they absolutely deserve the time and place, but this is about this season. You're talking Douglas Park, John Bennett, Alice Johnson, Graham Park, Barry Scott, Julian Warhart, and James Blair. You've got Stuart Robertson, who came under and has come under loads of criticism over the years, and I think actually Stuart Robertson's really grown into the role this season.
Careful now. You'll be getting other people saying, "You have sold out, and you just like everybody because."
Not a chance. But genuinely, David, credit where credit's due. We've lambasted them previously, but I think he's done well this season. Ross Wilson, I think, underpins the team and underpins the management team. James Bisgrove, you talked about, Andrew Dixon, James Blair, and then what you've got the coaching staff, Cammy, who I think are a proper team in their own right. Mm-hmm. Gerrard, McAllister, Beale, Culshaw, Stewart, Milson, those guys are a proper coaching and management team. And then you've got the other guys in the background. Your guys in the second team, Kevin Thompson, and Mulhollands and so on and so on. But special mention, because this guy's been here and done it since Christ Souness all the way through. How proud is Jimmy Bell going to be at the weekend?
Yes, Jimmy Bell. I think, like you say, he's going to be the guy who I'm really looking forward to seeing with that trophy as well. Right, let's talk about it then. David, I'll throw you right on the spot as well. Give me your impression in terms of where this title ranks out of all of them. In your opinion, where do you think that the importance of this currently sits at?
I can only really talk about my lifetime, and I know that speaking to older Bears who were about for, the one that ended Celtic's 9 in a row under Stein, we'll say how important that was, and there are clearly other ones in our history that were important. So I can only really talk about my life, and the first time I saw Rangers, I was alive for the second of Jock Wallace's trebles, but was a baby. But the first one was 86, 87, and for me that's always been the most important one. Not necessarily your favourite, not necessarily the the most exciting, which will always be 2005. But I think that to me, because I'd grown up, Ian would be the same, and Rangers were pish. We were the fifth best team in Scotland. That's not an exaggeration. We were, and you wondered, how the hell are we ever going to get back up? We just didn't even seem capable of having a challenge for the league. It was always over by about October. So that was huge, and of course it kick-started the Soonest revolution, and then propelled us onto that era of success. But this one, there's never been a period in our history like this. Literally, there hasn't. Obviously going down to the third division, having to make our way back up. But then when we got back up, any feelings of, well, it's all going to be all right now, we're quickly out the window. Celtic had a massive financial advantage over it. Huge, and should have, and were in the position to put their foot on our throat and really ramp up that financial gap. And I just need to go back to when we first started our Patreon site, December 2017. One of the first stories we covered was Derek McInnes knocking back the Rangers job, and that's where we were at that point, miles and miles and miles away from where we needed to be. And we bring in Steven Gerrard, and everything ends up being here. And it was never going to be quick, and it was never going to be easy. But we knew that if we just kept our faith, and we kept believing in the fact that the people at the top of the club would be able to turn it around. And Ian's right. You can criticise people at Rangers for certain things, and I do, and I have, and I will continue to do again. But I really believe that this Rangers board, when people do say, "Oh, you're a bit soft on them," one of the reasons why I'm maybe pro them is that I believe that they have the best interests of Rangers at heart. Doesn't mean they don't get things wrong, but I don't think that there's any ulterior motive. And having grown up near I did, then there always was. So for me, that there's that. But we certainly, and you'll remember the shows we did round about them, we certainly questioned their competence after the McInnes debacle, etc. But like everything at the club, it's been turned around, and maybe we didn't appreciate quite how big a job it was, because it was tough. We needed to just keep focused on where we were going to get through it. It would have been too painful otherwise, if you realised how far behind we were and what challenges we had to overcome. We might not have been able to do it, because we might have just gone, Jesus, this is too much. This is superhuman. And you're hearing a lot of nonsense at the moment about, your budget is the second biggest in the league, so therefore, second biggest. Celtic's budget should have blown us out of the water, especially the budget difference when Gerrard took over. And, by getting to Europe, by the likes of Douglas Park and John Bennett and all the other investors, then Rangers have been able to just claw it back. Yeah, they made mistakes, but this season in particular, they made mistakes because we made them make mistakes. They made mistakes because Rangers never let up. And they realised that this is different. We can't rely on them cocking up and giving us it. And when they did that, their arses fell out of them, and they just couldn't cope with it. And Rangers just steamrolled everybody and kept going right up until where we stand here tonight. So it's enormous. I think of people like Ian's children and my nephew. They've never seen Rangers win a title. And I think about all the people who we didn't, we didn't get to the end of the journey with, people who unfortunately we've lost along the way. And I just think that no matter if they're looking down on us, or if it's their first title or their 20th title, this has got a special place for all of us. It's got a special import. It's got a level of triumph. I've never felt the way I did after a league title, and I've seen plenty of them. I never felt the way I did on that Sunday, or even after the St Mirren game. I've never felt like that before. I can't remember really having this much excitement ever about ticking down to a title day that wasn't, a last day decider. And I think that in the future, we'll probably on our site even have debates about where it ranks and what it is, and we'll all bring stats and we'll bring logic and we'll bring good arguments, and it'll be fun, it'll be interesting. But I'm a great believer in your feelings are always a really good guide, and I don't think this feels like anything else, even in the storied history of our great club, even across 150 years. I don't feel that there's anything quite like this. For me, the Cup Winners' Cup will always be our greatest achievement, but this, from where we were to how we got there and how we did it as well, is almost unrivaled.
Hoggy, as David mentions there, we can't not talk about it. Very soon we're going to stop talking about it, but the journey, the idea of it being us and how we had to go through that hell together, and for to go all Al Pacino and you claw it back inch by inch and all that kind of thing. We had to go through all of that pain and misery and suffering, those learning curves that I think that was spoken about. Whether you're a player or you sit in the boardroom, it doesn't really make a difference. Everyone had to learn and adapt and become flexible. The odds were insurmountable because this was going to be Celtic's marquee season. As David mentions, the budget differences are completely ridiculous. I mean, we've beaten Celtic with a midfield that costs the same as they were paying Shane Duffy in a week. That's what you should be up against. So, of day, when you look at the balance sheets and all the rest of it, this is it's a miracle. It should have happened. It's that simple. And just through everybody coming together, whether you're the guy on the street, whether or not you're on the pitch, it doesn't make a difference. Everybody has been able to come together to be able to try and enjoy this. Now, we've all seen, leagues won at a canter. We've seen our 9 in a row period. We've seen, Helicopter Sunday. We've seen everything else to do with that. We've seen let's go to Kilmarnock and let's, get the game put to bed early. And by Christ, we had it done within 7 or 8 minutes. This one's been a slow burner because we did win it 2 months ago. We've had to build up to this point as well. There isn't a single Rangers fan, I don't think, who isn't counting down those hours, who isn't getting gradually more excited as it comes, because we've went through all that together. Even your sons, who haven't seen it yet, but they are going to experience it for the first time, they are getting it because they understand as to how much this kind of means to us. And I think Davey's totally right. I think you look at it with a degree of sentimentality, and you can always have those blue-tinted specs on or whatever. But when you look at the calculus, when you look at just the very simple odds that this should have happened in this way, we've done something incredible this season.
Not just this season, Cammy. 9 years ago, we were left dead in a ditch. We crawled out of it, and first game back, we're playing with, a cobbled together side at a stadium with hedge. And we all kidded ourselves on. Let's not beat about the bush. We all kidded ourselves on that this would be fun, and it was probably fun for about a month, and then it was shite. But none of us gave up. And we had frauds and we had liars and we had rapists and we had chancers in the boardroom who were trying to kill us, and they were trying to strip us of every single morsel that they could. And therefore, when we got back to the top league, I think we all, and I did this, I absolutely did this, kidding myself on that it would take a season and we'd win the league because of Rangers, and that's what we do. It was never going to be like that. Not when we had a plan A and plan B was do plan A better, and we were signing Philip Senderos. So that's what we were up against. And then we signed Gerrard, and we've had a couple of seasons of good, peppered with mistakes and bad and a little inconsistency. And it's only, guys, 14 months ago that the pandemic struck. And just before that, we all feared that Gerrard was done because he'd lost to Hearts, and he was very, very hard on his sleeve after that cup game. And we lost to Hamilton, and we all thought it could be over. And then, like I say, the pandemic struck and they worked their tail off. And you'll both remember the photos of pre-season when Nikola Katic and Joe Aribo arrived, and you think, what the fuck have they been eating over the summer? And And it's quite clear that they had trained and they had toned their physique and they had been coached. And we saw that from really, really early doors. And Cammy, you'll remember the post-match against Kilmarnock. We drew against Livingston 0-0. And the post-match against Kilmarnock, we won 2-0. And in hindsight, it was easy. It was fairly easy. But you and I were shitting bricks throughout the game because of that scar tissue. We're fearing at 1-0 any time Kilmarnock got up the park. And ever since then, it's just been consistency. Consistency in the league. The Europa League's been tremendous. The Cups have been really heavily disappointing. Of course they have, but, everything in context. This season has been utterly terrific. And, you look at that consistency and you look at the game just the other week there against Celtic and the way that for the past few years you guys have been bored with me talking about Rangers giving teams the respect of Real Madrid when they don't deserve it. And we gave Celtic zero respect and wiped the floor with them. We go out in our 38th game. I want us to wipe the floor with Aberdeen and then we'll enjoy lifting that trophy. And David, to go back to what you were talking about, for me, Cammy, this is the best, hands down. Given the story, given the backstory, given the context, it is going to be the best.
Yep, I couldn't agree more. I think when you look at everything within that, the kind of the shape of what we've just spoken about there, all the different parameters and variables and everything else that kind of goes into it, this equation doesn't match, but it does because we've worked our asses off to be able to get there, and I think that's a true testament to being able to try and see worthy champions as we have wanted it, and we've wanted it more than anyone else in the country, and we've absolutely blown away every single opponent that's been put in front of us. Very quickly for a wrap up, boys, not that you care, but what do you think the score predictions will be against Aberdeen? I'll come to you first, Hoggy.
I'm going to go 4-0 Rangers.
4-0 Rangers. David?
I think Rangers will win 3-1.
3-1. Okay, fair enough. We'll go for that. That's always seems to do well for us in the last day of the season against Aberdeen. Listen, folks, that's all of us from Extra for this week. David will be back with you on Monday with the flagship. And if you've got a big Ranger-shaped hole in your life, which is going to be coming up pretty soon, why not jump over to our Patreon site where you can get up to 5 shows a day about the world's most successful football club. And if you want to head on over to patreon.com/heart and hand, you'll be able to check all of that out. And we've got thousands and thousands of pods there with literally tons and tons and tons of hours of material there that you can go back and listen to through our archive. It is absolutely phenomenal. Thank you to our executive producers in London, Mr. Mike Lee and Mr. Paul Myers. Folks, all I can say to you is it's your championship. You're going to see history in the making on Saturday afternoon. Go and enjoy it. As David said, remember the people who didn't quite make it to the journey with us, but we've earned it. Enjoy yourselves. Make sure you practice your social distancing and restrictions and all the rest of it, but do it within your community. But do it and do it for the rest of the summer, because we have got lots and lots to dine out on. We've worked so hard. We've worked to such a great degree that we absolutely earn everything that's going to be coming our way on Saturday afternoon. Just make sure that you go and enjoy it. Thank you to my two guests, Ian Hogg.
A pleasure, mate.
And David Edgar.
Thank you, guys.
Enjoy it, folks, and we'll speak to you again next week. Thanks now.